Today we're doing an Aussie roast, but different. Roast beef and roast lamb are staples on Aussie tables. But today we're bringing in bold, complex and beautiful flavors from Korea and giving this classic meal a little twist. This isn't fusion for the sake of it. It's about appreciation. I've taken inspiration from traditional Korean flavors I love and found ways to bring them into a familiar format. We're talking about Galbi-style roast beef rump cap, a Doenjang-marinated lamb leg, buttery Korean-style braised baby potatoes, and garlicky green beans that'll tie it all together. And of course, there's gonna be kimchi on the side. And make sure you stay to the end for tips on how to make it look as good as it tastes. It's something you can cook at home, it's a little bit new, it's comfort food elevated. A huge thank you to Australian Beef and Australian Lamb for sponsoring this video. Now let's get stuck in. So starting with the beef. So I'm doing a roast rump cap here, and I love rump cap. It's delicious, it works really well for a roast. But there's lots of different roast cuts you could use for this, for the beef option. So go talk to your butcher. They're a wealth of knowledge. They're gonna let you know what's on special and what will suit you and your family well, because it also depends on the size of how many people you're trying to feed. So we've marinated it in like a Galbi style, which is like a beef short rib style marinade. Delicious. And next up, the roast lamb. So I've marinated it in doenjang, which is a fermented soybean paste, similar to a Japanese miso. We've also got a little bit of gochujang in there, the fermented chili bean paste. Now, I love roast lamb. It's one of my absolute favorite meats of all time. Now, this leg of lamb has got the shank taken off it. So go to your butcher and ask him for a leg of lamb with the shank off. Now, you can leave the shank on there if you want, but I find that shank meat tends to overcook a bit. So I think it's better to kind of take it off, save that for a different dish. Lamb shanks are also delicious as well. But we need to marinate these, and ideally they're marinated overnight. So we need to jump back to yesterday and I'll show you how to pull these marinades together. So for the Galbi style beef marinade, simply add the diced Asian pear, 2 shallots, garlic cloves, rice vinegar, sesame oil, soya sauce, brown sugar, and salt to a jug of a blender. Blend on high for about 1 minute until it's reasonably smooth. To prep the rump cap, simply remove it from the packet and pat it really dry of any excess moisture. Then using a sharp boning knife, remove any of the silver skin on the underside of the rump cap. Flip it over and have a look at how much fat is on the top of it. You're looking for about 1.5 centimeters of fat evenly across the top. Any more than that and you might want to trim it a little bit. Once your rump cap is prepped and ready to go, place it into a large dish and cover it in the Galbi marinade, making sure it's on all sides, then cover the whole container and place it in the fridge for at least 4 hours, but up to 24 hours. To make the lamb marinade, finely grate the ginger and garlic into a large bowl. Then you're going to add the soya bean paste, soya sauce, sesame oil, rice vinegar, brown sugar, and gochujang paste. Mix it really, really well. To prep the lamb ready to take the marinade, simply remove it from the packet and pat it really dry. Then you're gonna score the lamb in a diagonal pattern on both sides, roughly 5 or 6 times on each side. Cover the lamb leg in the marinade, making sure it's completely covered. Then place it into a dish, cover it with cling film and into the fridge to marinate for at least 4 hours, but 24 hours is even better. So to cook this lamb, we're going to put the lamb in first because it'll take slightly longer. My oven is set to 200 degrees fan force. If you don't have a fan in your oven, just put it up to 220. We're going to pump some heat into this to start with, and then we'll turn it down. So we'll cook it at 200 or 220 for about 20 minutes. Then we're going to turn the temperature down to 180 or 200. I like my lamb medium. I think if lamb's medium rare, it gets a bit chewy, which isn't great. So I've just pulled this out of the marinade. It's looking pretty good. And a little bit of oil in the bottom of the pan, and we're gonna really elegantly just get the rest of that marinade on there. Don't waste any of this. Spread it across, and then halfway through the cook, we're gonna baste it or brush it over the whole lot as well. So like I said, this is gonna go in the oven for 20 minutes, then we'll turn our oven down and we'll put our beef in. Le bouffe. So this is a really heavy metal roasting tray, and I like them because they conduct heat really well. You could just roast it in this, to be honest, but we're gonna roast this at 180 degrees, and we want medium rare. So I'm gonna pull this when the internal temperature gets to between 45 and 48 degrees, and then we'll rest it and it will come up to about 55 degrees while we're resting it. We're gonna rest it for a good 25, 30 minutes even. That resting period is really important, especially when you're doing roast meat, because when you carve it, the last thing you want is like, juices running all over people's roasting tray. I haven't put any oil on the bottom of this pan. That's kind of deliberately. There's a pretty big fat cap on this and it's going to render out pretty quickly. And it's only going to take about 45 to 50 minutes, I reckon, this piece of meat to get it to medium rare. If you want your meat more medium, I'd take it to like 55 degrees internal before you pull it out. But we're about to turn the oven down from the lamb and then we'll get our roast beef in. And while I've got your attention, it's a great time to say that it's super important that you go and support your local butcher. They're a wealth of knowledge. They're going to help you find things that will fit your need. And if you build a relationship with them, they might even throw you the odd cheeky special. And while you're supporting them, why don't you support me as well? If you don't follow, then subscribe. We're going to post amazing videos every week. And if you're not subscribed, you won't see when they come up and hit your feed. So subscribe now and you'll be the first people to see. Alrighty, it's been 20 minutes. Temperature goes down to 180. Beef goes in. Now it's time to start doing our potatoes. So we're going to do a braised potato. And one of the reasons why I like doing a braised potato is because often when you're doing a roast, you run out of oven space, especially if you're doing two meats like we are today. Now, I love roast potatoes. Don't get me wrong, they have their place, but I think these can be just as good. So I'm just gonna half these little baby potatoes. These are Desirees. You want something that's floury, not waxy. So depending where you are in the world will depend on what potato that is. But I do like these nice little small ones. I've got a dish here that I have the lid for. I'm gonna turn that on to a high heat and get that preheating, and we'll get a little bit of olive oil in there as well. So we just want a bit of heat in this pan before we put anything in there. We're going to put them flesh side down. We'll just keep them rolling around light season for about 15 minutes to try and get some color on the outside. So I want some salt on the bottom of these potatoes. If I try and season it here, salt's going to go everywhere. So we're going to season the bottom of the pan. Seems like a bit weird, but it will make sense in a second. Then put your potatoes flesh down, and that way there's salt on the bottom of them. The salt obviously helps season it, which is important, but it also helps get good colour on the outside. I've got all the potatoes I can touching the bottom, but that's not enough potatoes for what I want to, for the amount of people I want to feed. So I am just going to put the potatoes on the top, faced up. And what that's going to do is start steam them or start to cook them from the outside. Eventually they'll all kind of get a bit of colour on the underside as well. Now if you're in a professional kitchen, you get yelled at for doing this, for overcrowding your pan, but this isn't a professional kitchen. It's my home and it's your home, so we can kind of break a couple of rules. So most of that oil has kind of disappeared. I'm going to add a bit of lard. You can add more oil, but I like the flavour that the lard gives. You could use tallow as well, or chicken fat would work really nicely in here. And the best place to buy animal fat like that, like duck fat, goose fat, is your local butcher. They'll have all that stuff in stock. So we've got some really nice colour developed in our potatoes now, which is great to see. 5 cloves of garlic that I've just finely grated. That's going to go in. About 1/3 of a cup of soy sauce. About 1 cup of chicken stock. You could use veg stock. You could just use water at a pinch. Some rice vinegar and brown sugar. Stir that through so the brown sugar dissolves, and the garlic is nice and evenly distributed. And we're just going to continue cooking these potatoes. We're going to cover them first for about 15 minutes to make sure they're cooked through before removing the cover, and then we'll reduce the sauce so it goes all lovely and sticky. So our potatoes have been cooking for 12 minutes, 10-12 minutes. We're just going to remove the lid and we're going to let those reduce and continue cooking for another 15 minutes until that sauce is really thick and glazing the potatoes nicely. So our sauce is completely reduced. We're just going to stir that around our potatoes, make sure they're lovely and coated in that delicious liquid. Then we're going to add our last couple of ingredients. And the good thing about these potatoes is that we can just kind of let them do their thing and chill out. And if they need to get a little bit more heat later, we can put that in later on. So we've got a little bit of sesame oil here. In that goes. Korean food's really synonymous with a couple of things, garlic and sesame oil. To up that sesame flavour, we've got some sesame seeds, and there you go. And a little bit more sweetness from some honey. We're just going to gently stir those through. Our meat's not finished yet, it's not even resting, but that's not an issue. We can kind of let these sit here. They'll hold temperature for quite a while, but we'll let these sit here with the lid on. Turn the heat back on just underneath them to bring them back up to temperature. Then we're ready to serve. Finish with a little bit of spring onion, but we'll get to that later. Let's check on that meat. Oh yeah. Just flip this lamb around, it's looking good. See all that sugar's caramelized. What are we up to? 32, 40-ish. Kind of want this at about 55 in the center, so it's almost there. Just gonna baste it a little bit because we've got all this lovely fat that's rendered off it. So just carefully get a spoon in there and pour some of that over the top. We'll let that continue to do its thing. And the beef. Now we're starting to get good color on that point there. We're not too far away at all on that beef, I don't think. It says 30 there, but once you kind of push past that fat cap, it's at like 46, so don't think we're too far at all. Sometimes it helps, and you go in from the side, and then you know you're right in the actual meat there, and that's reading at like 49, which is way hotter than I thought it would. But that's okay. We're gonna pull that in a minute, otherwise we're gonna be over. So if I put the thermometer there, and I'm just sitting it on top of that Silverstone, which is underneath the layer of fat, it's only reading 27. As soon as I push it through that, we're up to kind of 49. So what we're after is a temperature of the actual muscle, of that meat there. And I think we're pretty good. So I'm gonna pull that out and we'll let it rest. Give that lamb 10 more minutes. So our lamb's at temperature, I just checked it. I'm gonna pull that out, let it rest. And I'm just gonna turn this oven right up to as hot as it will go, and I'll talk about that right now. So I'm really happy with the color that we've got on this lamb. Really good char on the outside, and all that's gonna do is add amazing flavor. However, our beef is cooked through. It's at the temperature we want on the inside, but it's not as, there's not as much development of flavor in the outside that I'd like. So that's why I've turned that oven right up. I'm gonna shove that back in there now that this is rested for 10 minutes. For like 5 minutes is max it will take, just to get the color on the outside, and then we'll let everything rest for a good 20 minutes. And while everything's resting, we'll start our beans. So I've left this in there as long as I dare, because if I leave it in any longer, we're gonna run the risk of overcooking the meat. So, we've got a bit more color on there, probably not quite as much as I'd like, to be honest. But yeah, I think there's a lesson learnt there. You could probably put that in at 200 degrees instead of 180 fan forced. I'm gonna leave this at the back to rest. And while that's happening, we can start getting our beans ready. So I've got a big pot of water here. And make sure that's boiling nicely. Season it well with salt. Let that come back up to the boil after my explosion. We've got some green beans, top and tailed. In they go. Like 4 minutes. We're not fully cooking them, but I'm pretty close. So our meat's almost ready. We just need to finish our beans. Put a little bit of heat under our potatoes to bring them back up to temperature. And then we can start serving. And I've got a few tricks up my sleeve to share with you once we start serving, just to make sure it looks delicious. Just gonna grate about 6 cloves of garlic, nice and fine. So we've got a saute pan on a medium-high heat. And to that, I'm gonna add about a tablespoon of lard. If you don't want to use lard, you could just use a neutral flavored oil like peanut oil. So now our lard's nice and hot, we're gonna add our blanched beans. And just spread them out. Gonna get a little bit of color on the outside, not too much though. Be careful if those beans are a little bit wet, it will spit back at you. So turn your heat down to like medium, then add about a tablespoon of sesame oil, about a teaspoon of gochugaru, our garlic cloves, soy sauce, and just about a teaspoon of honey. Stir all that through. Make sure that garlic's nice and evenly distributed. Oh man, they smell good. And that's them ready to go. To keep those hot, I'm gonna turn that heat off, just to pop a lid on it. That'll keep a bit of heat in there. We're gonna move that to the side next to our potatoes. The flame's on very low under those potatoes just to bring them back up to temperature. The exciting part. Let's pull this all together. So one of the key things I think is the most important when you're plating is to make sure you're ready. So we need to get this little lonely spring onion finely chopped, because that's going to help garnish our potato. We're going to keep the white part and the green part separate, because I'm going to stir this white part through the potato, and the green part we'll keep just for the top for garnish. So just finely slice that white. So I've cut it in half lengthways, and then we're going to finely slice it. Leave that to one side. Put our greens, flatten it out. Just take those scraggly end bits off, and at a nice big angle, we're going to finely slice those. So Korean food's really known, not really known, but one of the common things in Korean food is banchan. It's where you have lots of little pickled and sweet and savory things on the outside. So today I think most Koreans that have a couple of different things, but we've got the beans, the potatoes, we've got some normal cabbage kimchi, and then we've got some of this here, which I made. It's a kohlrabi kimchi. There's a video for this, or a short for this, and a recipe for this on my website already. So we'll get some of that on the side. We're gonna get everything ready, and the last thing we're gonna do is slice our meat, because it's kind of the hero of the dish. I'm gonna use all of this. 2 types of kimchi there. Next we'll serve our beans. Make sure you give it another stir. And that's kind of to make sure that there's lots of that sauce is evenly coating those beans. They're gonna present better. And it's little things like you don't have to like be super precise with it, but if you have an elongated dish like this one, and then we serve our beans all kind of the same direction, I think anyway, that just looks a bit more appealing. Then get that sauce, just swirl your pan around so that all that lovely garlic is distributed. Pour that over the top. So garlic beans. So we got our braised potatoes. Whew, man, these look good. White parts go in. Stir that through carefully. We'll stir through maybe 1/3 of the greens as well. Serve these up. And when you're serving things like potatoes, there's like a tendency to want to just kind of pour them in from the pot. It's obviously faster. But what happens when you do that is you're gonna lead yourself to, doing exactly what I just did there. Is you're gonna have a lot of dirt or a lot of like the sauce on the rim of the plate. And it's like attention to detail around that stuff that really kind of sets apart good plating and better plating. So just take your time, stack them neatly, and try and keep your plate, the rim of your plate, nice and clean. As a chef used to say to me, the rim of the plate is for the customer. He wasn't a very nice human being, so I won't credit him. Greens on top. It's also that, they're putting half the greens through there, some on the top, kind of looks a bit more natural if we've got some of them that's kind of weaved through the whole of the dish. Then we just need to carve our meat. So I'm gonna use a separate board so that I can wipe it down, clean it if I need to. Plate for our beef, plate for our lamb. Start with our lamb. Now if you think that this has not got enough temperature, there's 2 things you can do. You can kind of put the whole thing back in and reheat the whole thing, or you can slice it and just flash it through the oven as well. This looks really impressive. You can put that on the plate as it is, it looks really impressive. However, it's not super practical. I think sometimes it's a bit of a mission to kind of carve at the table. So if you take your piece of leg of lamb, you can see there's a bone that's running up here, there's a joint around here, and then it keeps up. Got a big piece of meat here. This is what we want to cut off first. So just run your blade just down the piece of meat, take that piece off carefully, keep that to the side. When we're roasting lamb, I'm really happy with the temperature of this lamb. This is what we're looking for, blushing pink, I think. I think if lamb's kind of any rarer than this, it's quite chewy. Now, if you like it that's perfectly fine as well. So then just plant your lamb and then carefully, we're just gonna slice slices off it now, off the bone. There's a big joint here with a lot of connective tissue, so don't stress too much about getting everything off that. It's also kind of good for soup the next day. Or if you're my brother PJ, he'll just be very uncouth and just chew and gnaw all these pieces off the bone. I think unlike the bone like a tomahawk steak, if you kind of carve that off, I think that looks really good to present. I don't think these bones look great to present, so we'll save that for PJ to gnaw on later. So all this meat here should be a good size. This might be one nugget that we're just gonna slice up a little bit. But we're just gonna kind of place this on our plate, funny that, just off to one center. And it looks very untidy at the moment, but that's okay. It's gonna look good in a second. So we've got this big nugget here. We want lots of nice slices, which is gonna be what we present. So I'm gonna slice a piece, push it to the side, and just keep repeating until all that's cut through. Once you got your last nice looking slice, just run your blade through this last little piece, and we'll leave that on the bottom. And then we're gonna carefully lift all this up on a plate. Stunning. Can I have a quick wipe down? Time to carve le boeuf. So picanha, if you look underneath, I don't want to roll it over. I'll try and turn it around to show you. I'm trying to keep that fat cap nice and tacked. Oh, I just ruined it. You're gonna see that the grains are they kind of start at this point here, and they kind of fan out this way. So we want to cut that against the grain. So we're going to cut the picanha this way. We have got a pretty big fat cap here, which I really enjoy. Some people like
Caitlin probably isn't super into eating all that fat, but I really enjoy it. So how we present this, unlike a normal steak, is we'll leave the fat cap at the bottom. Pretty happy with that cook though. It's turned out nice. And just cut enough that it's going to fill your plate or you think you're going to eat. It's better to store this stuff like that as a whole piece for your sandwiches the next day rather than sliced. So even though we're not going to slice this, we are going to still put this on the tray. I think it kind of presents better. And then on goes the meat. So I fold that one side of that beef under, then it kind of sits up a bit higher. And then like any sliced beef, I think it has to be finished with some flaky salt. It's a pretty impressive looking roast if you ask me. Kimchi, kohlrabi, green beans, braised potatoes, rump cap, roast lamb, delicious. I guess I better make a plate and taste it. I know what this kohlrabi kimchi tastes like, but that's why I'm putting lots on, because it's delicious. All right, I'm excited. Oh, wow. I have to stop me eating. It's delicious. It's absolutely delicious. It's like, it's comfort food, but completely elevated. The beef is lovely and savory, and talk about umami, that lamb with that soybean paste on the outside is outstanding. The potatoes are delicious and sweet, and it rounds out really well with the kimchi and the beans. Delicious. Don't forget, make sure you use your local butcher. They're a wealth of knowledge that you can pull from, and that's where you're gonna get the best cuts of meat at the best prices. Thanks legends so much for watching. Please like this video if we took anything from it. If you're not subscribed, click that subscribe button and make sure you comment. We love seeing your comments. We really enjoy reading them on Sunday mornings when we wake up, and we'll see you next week for another recipe. Peace.